Well, so had gotten a little bit carried away. But what I mean, yes, the sizing of the people. So, because of all, I mean, basically, like it exists today, it did not exist, and people were much thinner. So, and so much smaller. Overall, they were much smaller. And the further one goes back, the smaller they were. So, this is not 1900, that is 1860. It says, actually, I just rewatched the part now, and it said at the beginning where to light out the fireworks in the second year of the Civil War, American Civil War. So I think that was 1863, or was it 62? Never mind. So this is not 1900, so people were even shorter and smaller. And on top of that, that is the 5 points where people live in squalor and poverty, and so either they are born in that or they otherwise migrate to that. But if you are a migrant from Ireland, then it was due to the famine, and so they were poor Irishmen that had been bred up in poverty, and so they would not be very tall either, and so on and so forth. So at last, to get back to the clothing, to get originals for hundreds of people, even if it was only for one thing. For example, if they had said, we only want mostly original clothing, at least original trousers and shirts and coats, whatever, like the men items, not necessarily the cravats and all, which are even harder to find. We want originals for only the first scene. Not the third scene, because they said in 18... Oh, well, for the third scene, all right. 1800, which is actually 1846, even harder. People are even smaller then. We only want originals. It would thus not really be physically possible. And on top of that would be... Hence the reason for which I picked up the first scene would be a great problem. So I'm not talking about the very first scene in the old brewery. I actually mean the fight. The big fight. In the snow at the very beginning of the film. This is set in 1846, and well, even if originals were able to be found, they end up, most characters, being covered in fake blood, with a lot of them, most of them, pretending to be dead. So the problem is they are rolling up in the snow and so mud, fighting to fight arm to arm, with these medieval weapons, although it is not medieval, but whatever, they do not have gunpowder, pistols and all that, to fight and to come charging at one another, and so they obviously end up rolling each other into the snow, and also they would dirty all those originals to a point that if they have to redo the scene, they need backup, so they probably did extra clothing, extra copies, so that if in case they imagine a big problem, imagine suddenly it started raining and it was not supposed to rain on that, and this was filmed generally outside. It would have to stop everything, because if it rains, the cameras were not protected. So it not only was he did not want it to be on a rainy day, but all right, he could say it was too bad to start it during the scene, so it will be a scene under the rain. Yes, but if they had not planned that, and the cameras filming it, and these cost millions of dollars, are broken down, what are they going to do? So perhaps they have to cut it all down. They are already covered in the fake blood, so they probably had backup costumes. So you cannot expect to have 250, or at the very least 150 costumes plus 150 copies, and they need copies because if they started, for example, they all arrived, they are not in the blood, they are not fighting yet, they insult each other, and then they fight. So imagine when they all arrive, also something went wrong and they have to fix that. Now they got the blood on the costumes, so they need backup to redo the beginning, because the fake blood might not be able to go away, and on top of that they started fighting, and so breaking down the costumes. So if you just not look, anybody watching it when the movie would be done would see it and say, well, but the butcher had blood right there in the middle, I can see it before he fights, and then he fights and the blood is there. Or, So they need backup costumes. So you can't expect them to first of all dirty, superbly rare originals to a point that will probably not be repellable, because some of those costumes are on sale right now and they still have the original makeup dead, or the gunpowder, or because then there's a fight scene in the end with the guns, cannons charging at them, and all the fake blood. So it probably is not washable, or there's not really know if it's washable or not. So not only normally one or not to dirty, superbly rare originals that date from the 1840s or at least 50s if they were not that original, and plus one can't expect to have double for each character, or at least something that may not be identically the same, or it may be identically the same but not age identically the same. That may be alright, but still we're not getting that. It is not really physically possible. So he could not care, he could think. And then physically, even today with eBay was not, it already existed, especially in the United States, but it was not what it is today. So even with the budget they had, they would not have been able to find originals from the 1840s, especially since these poor characters probably dressed in very used clothing. So they would likely, those items of clothes, a lot of them, for most characters, and by what I mean by a lot of them for most characters is, most characters would have most of their clothing, maybe almost 90% of what they are wearing, dated to perhaps the 1830s, if not before, because they actually all look, especially the Irish, which is accurate. The Irish are very poor. These are the very poor Irish that live in the 5 Points Old Brewery, and this is true. In the 1840s, there were at one point 1,000 illegal immigrants just stacked in there illegally. They were not allowed to be there, obviously, and this was an abandoned brewery building, and also there was not the space to accommodate 1,000 persons, so they lived in horrible squalor, horrible conditions, absolutely horrible. Some of the worst conditions of Western Europe at that time. And at that time, conditions were, anyhow, generally speaking, even for rich men, much more terribly, incredibly much more horrible than it is today. So to come out, and not all of them come out, only a few come out first from the old brewery, only a few. And they all look dirty, and most of their clothes looks at least distressed. And in McGoyle, in the beginning, he's part of the Irish gang, and then he betrays them, he goes with the natives. He actually has trousers that I think look very accurate, because I'm trying to pose that he actually has them patched in so many places with fabrics that are completely different to his trousers are clearly made out of a black sort of wool, they're black, but then they are patched. I paused right there, I paused it 5 minutes and a half, and one can clearly see his trousers are patched with very different contrasting materials and the very flat hips. And so I think that is the reason for which many people said that the clothes were too theatrical, but it would have looked like that, it would have been that theatrical, because without any money, he still wants to have trousers on. And he does not so happen when you are a very miserable, this is more than poverty, this is misery, starving Irish migrant in a country that does not accept you. How would you get another, at least black cloth, even if it is a different type of cloth, completely different type of cloth? No, he just takes cloth wherever he finds it and he patches the holes. So, or somebody does it for him or whatever. Or perhaps somebody had did it before and then he inherited those trousers because it was his friend and he just died in front of him and he took out the trousers. This could be a probable scenario of that. So this is very accurate to have him, to have trousers like that. But what I mean is, so one could come to think, yes, well, why not use the originals? It is good if they are ill-fitting, especially for the Irish. It is good if, alright, perhaps it should, 1840s would be very hard to find originals from then, but at least something from 1900, and if it fits badly, and if it is too small, because people were usually smaller, and if it is very distressed, even broken down to a point that it can't even be repaired, and it just, even on the film, it looks completely broken down, even for an extra at the back. Well, it could be good for the Irish, yes, but again, the problem of of duplicating it and then thinking, although it is completely broken down, this thing is at least from 1900 or way before, and it's so quite to very rare, dependent on what exact type of item it is. and